Carolina Celeste Granini, and I'm a PhD student of English literature here at Ca' Foscari University of Venice. And today I'm here to interview Professor Daniela Cesiri, our professor of English language, linguistics and translation, always here at Ca' Foscari, and specifically in our department of linguistics and comparative cultural studies. So, of course, we're here to talk about your latest volume, which is Communicating Food to Children, Linguistic and Sociocultural Perspectives. And this volume was published by Routledge at the end of September 2025. What lies behind the genesis of this book? And what was your motivation to write about food-related communication, specifically targeting children?
Hello, Carolina, and hello, everyone. Well, actually, I wrote this book because, to my surprise, I found out that food-related communication targeting children was an under-researched field. There is a significant body of research on food discourse, but today relatively little has been published and studied about food-related communication specifically aimed at children as a particular category of actors. And in addition, we should consider that food is important for not just for its nutritional function, but for its socializing function. When a child is born, of course, we feed them, but we also use food as a way of introducing children into a specific community and its rituals. And so in my book, I investigate the verbal and visual strategies and also the extra-linguistic factors that shape how children learn about food and these socializing rituals that are behind the consumption of food within a specific community. This, of course, includes examining the role of marketing in children's choices for their own diet and how it shapes the whole family's lifestyle.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Daniela. I also actually noticed the same importance regarding my research topic. So I work in children's and YA literature and specifically in food studies and body studies in my work. And I actually noticed this crucial role in how young readers can interpret social structures, but also, let's say, environmental anxieties, family dynamics, just as you said. And I specifically study YA dystopias and the role of food in YA dystopias. And there, of course, food-related communication is extremely meaningful, and it can shape young readers' emotional but also cultural understanding of the world. And clearly this brings me to my second question for you. So I'm aware that you analyze your data set using several methodological approaches. I'm very curious about them. And I wanted to ask you, do you think that it's important to investigate food-related communication for children from a multidisciplinary perspective?
Not just because I used this multidisciplinary perspective in my own publication, but also because, as I was saying, there are several factors that are involved in food-related communication. In particular, if we consider the book, I used several viewpoints and several disciplines to investigate the visual and the verbal component of my data set. The methods that I used, apart from the ones that you already mentioned, are, for instance, corpus linguistics, critical discourse analysis, gender studies, multimodality. And they were all, I considered them all necessary to analyze the multi-layered factors that compose food-related communication and the materials that are included in my data set. And they are all necessary to transmit food-related concepts to children. However, we also need to consider the cultural factors, so not just the linguistic or, let's say, the visual aspects that compose the material, but also the cultural factors that are at play when we construct and shape food-related communication, not just for children, in food-related communication in more general terms. So only by applying this multidisciplinary perspective, which might also involve cultural and literary studies, can we expect to just start understanding the cultural and social influences that on food-related communicative practices, especially when we consider food-related communication targeting children. And that's because in this kind of audience, we need to include children and their families. So we include a varied audience that includes, in turn, several age groups and their corresponding different communicative characteristics.
Sure. Thank you so much. So I'm also wondering, is this the same reason why you collected in your volume so many different kinds of materials as well?
Yes, that's right, Carolina, and it was exactly my point. I wanted to include as many typologies of materials, genres that are likely to target children. And for this reason, I included materials to analyze them that were taken from, for instance, food blogs, advertisements, websites, cookbooks, but also institutional websites from international organizations. So in this particular case, they are organizations that issue guidelines on the correct nutrition to be given to children. So I wanted to include all the possible typologies of genres. So I classified them into 3 macro categories, depending on the specific communicative purposes and genres of this material. Well, of course, the readers will know these categories when they read the book, hopefully. But let me anticipate as a kind of a spoiler that I classified these categories into technical products, which include cookbooks, for instance, food blogs. Then we have commercial products, for instance, advertisements, and then institutional products. So the material that I collected from international organizations. Another aspect that I would like to clarify is that I call these materials purposely not materials but products, because they are composed of, they are varied, they are composed of text, images, sometimes they are videos, sometimes they are composed only of visual components, the auditory components, so they cannot be classified with just one term. So they have different communicative purposes. So I used this label, product, to define them.
Okay, that's extremely interesting. So, just to understand it better, you had your data set, and it was composed of 3 categories of products, as you mentioned, and then you analyzed those, applying different methods of investigation. So when your investigation was completed, did you find any unexpected results that were a surprise for you, that particularly surprised you?
Well, all things considered, what surprised me the most about the findings and the results, but also about the material and the products, as I was saying, was the fact that in general, the products demonstrated that and showed that the companies, the institutions, and the authors that produced these products, they seem to be more self-centered. More focused on them that were producing the text or the products rather than on the target audience. So they were not really focusing on the target audience, on children or their families, but they were more interested in themselves. as the senders of the message. And so what my study, but this is also a kind of reflection that is found in other studies from other disciplines. So what we are advocating is a greater synergy between and among the different actors involved in the communicative process in food-related communication, especially targeting children and their families, and in those that produce these products, but also greater awareness of the sociocultural background of the target audience in those who create these products. So the target audience should be the focus rather than the sender of the message.
Yeah, I completely agree, of course, yes. So, okay, thank you once again for this amazing answer. And everything we're talking about is extremely interesting to me. This is quite clearly also because in my research, I noticed the same kind of risk related to, I would say, misunderstanding, misinterpretation as well. So when we consider food, without taking into consideration children's or teenagers' cultural or socio-emotional background, narratives can unintentionally reproduce exclusion in a way. So I would say that your findings, of course, really resonate with what I work with what I observe in novels and literary representation for young adults. I would also say that this can be applied to your own study in a way, in the sense that it does have some practical applications, right? So it's not just an academic investigation of data sets, isn't it?
No, that's right, Carolina. I actually meant my study, the book, a volume with practical applications. For instance, the results of my research on the several products could be used by the corresponding creators to enhance their own communicative strategies, their own production, to reach the corresponding audience even more effectively, if you like, and be more accessible when addressing the general public, in particular families, because they are, of course, the actors that are more interested in this kind of communication. In addition, my book can also be used as a starting point for similar studies, which could integrate the use of several disciplines and methodological approaches to food-related material, for instance. So I think it could be of interest to both academics and, let's call them, stakeholders.
Oh, this is extremely interesting once again. I keep repeating this, but it is extremely interesting.
Thank you.
And I was wondering, could you please elaborate a little bit more on this last point? I mean, what could be the implications for other disciplines as well?
There are several disciplinary fields that come to my mind that might be involved, interested in the results, in the findings of the book. Not just the disciplines that I used and that I just remind are corpus linguistics, critical discourse analysis, multimodality, or gender studies, for instance, because in my book I highlighted also the representation of gender-based stereotypes involved in food-related communication targeting children. But considering that children are the target audience of the products that I investigated, I think that also childhood studies, for instance, might be another field that could be interested in the publication. Or considering that the book includes products involving materials produced by the World Health Organization, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, the World Food Programs. So all these international organizations, public health studies, and professionals involved in public health policies, for instance, could also be interested in the findings of my study. Or research also considering, diet culture, body image could also be be, or even diet culture might also be interested in the findings of the book. Psychology, sociology, so the multidisciplinary nature of the investigation is really, it opens the way to this multidisciplinary perspective. But consider also that the book investigates the verbal, the visual components, so for marketing purposes, targeting children. The fact that the book investigates different media and also the way in which food culture is represented to children, also studies that wish to investigate, the representation of children's public identity through food might also be interested in the findings of my book. So media communication studies might be involved at this point. And last but not least, and this perhaps might be of greater interest for our, AIA audience, cultural and literary studies. You yourself pointed out that the results of my book actually resonates with your own research. So we already found some contact points.
Sure. Why not?
Yes, absolutely. One of the chapters in my publication is dedicated to an overview of the state of the art available on food in children's literature. So you also consider, these aspects. So as you can see, I really believe that interdisciplinarity from a multi-layered perspective can be involved in the representation of food to children, food-related communication involving children. And so this is why I consider that the findings in the book can be potentially interesting for several disciplines beyond, the linguistics of food-related communication in English.
Okay, so if I'm allowed to say this, I think that you gave us some food for thought, I suppose.
I hope so.
Yeah, sure, for sure. And I really want to thank you so much for this interview and for your amazing contribution with your volume.
Thank you.
Which I love. And
thank you,
of course,
you're a darling.
No, thank you. I also, of course, want to thank the whole AIA community.
Thank you.
And of course, we are so lucky to have you here with us at Ca' Foscri. Extremely, extremely lucky. And last but not least, I want to thank everyone.
This wasn't prepared.
And this was not prepared. No, for sure. And no, of course, I want to thank all of us, all of you that are watching this video or witnessing this. And thank you for staying with us. And bye.
Bye.